Namaskar to all of you. I welcome all the participants today, which have connected to us through Zoom and who are also joining us through Facebook Live. Today, we are continuing the series of lecture, part 2 of the Khemra Jayanti. Yesterday, the speaker was Dr. Navjivan Rastogi, who gave us an idea of the works done by Acharya Khemraj. In continuation to that series, today we have another learned scholar, Dr. Motilal Pandit. Dr. Motilal Pandit is not unknown to the people around the Shaivite circles. He has written a number of books related to the Kashmir Shaivism. His mentor was Dr. Baljinath Pandit. Coming directly from the lineage of scholars, Dr. Motilal Pandit has written lots of papers, research papers, and books on various aspects of Kashmiri Shaivism. Today, Dr. Motilal Pandit will give us a further introduction in the works of Shri Acharya Khemraj. I welcome Shri Motilal Pandit ji to enlighten us further in this series. Shri Motilal ji Pandit.
Unknown times to the present, I shall recite the verse of Abhinavgupta Acharya, which he has composed in honor of his Guru Shambhunatha and also to his Dhuti.
In Tantra, he says, I am very much touched by this verse. How our great Acharya
It's cut out. Sunilji, the internet must have cut out. Sorry, everybody. I'm just going to call Sunilji.
Shri Bhatnath Charan Abja Yuga Tatha Shri Bhattarik Angri Yugala Guru Santatirya Bodha Anyi Pashi Vish Nut Upasanot Bodha O Jala Abhinav Gupta Yidam Karoti जो परम स्वरूप शंभुनाथ जी के चरण कमलों और उनकी दूती के दो चरण कमलों से जो महती the tradition, the parampara that has come down to us, and that parampara is destroying that which is other than Bodha, awareness. Beneath the pasha, it destroys that sansaric pasha, the tradition which has come from the holy feet of Shambhunath and his Dhuti Bhattatarika in the composition of this Shastra, the Shastra which is meant to destroy the ignorance that is inherent or that we have inherited through our malas, And that is the aim of this Shastra. And Paramush Acharya Chaimraj belonged to this tradition. He not only belonged to this tradition, but was direct disciple of this great Acharya Abhinav Gupta. And his genius, his pratibha, is quite reflected in whatever Parama Acharya Chaim Raja composed. He has composed a number of works, which are numerous. Most of them are commentaries on tantras, on stutis, and the two original works that he composed is Pratibhigya Hridayam and Para Praveshaka. The works he composed were commentaries on Supanda Karika called Supanda Doha and Supanda Nirnaya. He composed on Sachanda Tantra, the commentary on Netra Tantra, as well as Vijnana Bhairava, which is only half he had completed. Other half was completed by Shiv Upadhyaya in 8th century. He also wrote commentaries on Shiv Stotravali as well as Sattva-Chintamani. Let us now dwell on the main theme as to what constitutes the Pratibhigya philosophy. What does it explain to us? How does it explain to us as to what the ultimate reality, or what we may call metaphysical reality, is all about? It speaks in the very first verse of Shiva Sutra, Chaitanyam Atma. The question is, why does Trikshaivism or Pratibhigya posit Chaitanya as the supreme reality, which Abhinav Gupta calls Paramashiv and Utpal Acharya calls Maheshwar? So this ultimate reality is spoken of in many terms. It is spoken of Chit, Chaitanya, Chitti, Anutar, Paramashiv, Parasamvit, Paravak. All these terms revolve around this ultimate reality, metaphysical reality, which otherwise is called in philosophical terms absolute. Why is Prakasha, the Chaitanya, the Chit, the term used mostly in Pratibhigya philosophy? It is because if there were no Chit, there will be no existence at all. It is Chit that manifests, that makes everything knowable, that makes everything known, that makes everything prakashyati. That's why ultimate reality is referred to as Chit absolute. And this Chit is the underlying principle of everything that changes. So here, Kashmir Shaivism and Buddhism, because Buddhism and Kashmir Shaivism are quite interrelated, accepts the fact that the entire objectivity is under constant transformation, under constant change. And whatever we perceive and see is also changing from minute to minute. That's why it says that Paramusamvit or Paramushiv, Maheshwar are the theological terms, and philosophical term would be Anutar, Parasamvit, Paravak. So if we use metaphysical terms, we should use Anutar, Parasamvit, and Paravak. If we use theological terms, then we have to use Paramushiv, the supreme being. We can translate it into metaphysical terms also as supreme being. Since it is this Prakasha, this Chitta Prakasha, which is the underlying principle of everything that changes. Buddhists are here. Buddhists see only the change. They don't see what is the underlying principle upon which this change occurs. Because change cannot occur in a vacuum. It is like the flowing water in a stream. It is impossible for the water to flow unless it has a base, it has a Aadhar. And that Aadhar is the Prithvi. If there is no Aadhar, if there is no basis, there is no possibility for water to flow. And water to flow means water is always changing from every distance, from minute to minute, from place to place. It's constantly changing, it is flowing. Like that, this universe which we see, of which we have Abbas, we will speak about Abbas, of which we have this Abbas, this verse, this universe is also changing through cognition from moment to moment, from moment to moment. It is not static. It is always changing. That is the nature of energy. Because energy cannot, that is the nature of Supanda. But now the question is, if the consciousness is the underlying principle of everything that is changing, therefore the consciousness is said to be Prakasha. It is not only Prakasha, it is also Vimarsha. And Vimarsha mean, does that mean consciousness is also changing? Because Vimarsha is activity, and activity denotes change. If Paramashiv is Vimarsh, if consciousness is Vimarsh, does that mean it is changing? No, it is not changing. Awareness, it is, a Vimarsh is not an activity in terms of which change takes place. Vimarsh is pure awareness. It is like consciousness witnessing everything that is happening. And in itself, it is not changing. Or we should say, it is like the sea upon which various waves are occurring. But the sea in itself remains the same as it was. Although on its surface, there are tarangas, there are waves occurring. They are emerging, they are subsidizing, they are merging again back into the sea. In like ways, this universe, which is emerging out of this chit through consciousness, through Vimarsh, is again back being absorbed by the same consciousness. That is why we say it is Supanda, it is Vimarsh, it does not change consciousness, as the phenomena that which we appear, that which we experience in our consciousness, that changes. It is not like that. Consciousness does not change like that. It never changes. It is like, it is not static also. It is pulsating, supandanam. Now we go again. Let us see that there is a great difference between here, between the Shankar, Advaita Vedant, and Kashmir Shaivism, or Turkic Shaivism, or we make a Pratyabhijna Shaivism. Shankar Shaivism looks at absolute, Parabrahm, only in terms of Chit, only in terms of Prakash. It does not look at it in terms of Vimarsha. Because if there is no Vimarsha, then the Chit, the so-called Chit, would be as dead, as inert, as any other object. Let us say like this: sun is full of light, the diamond is full of light, but sun never knows it is full of light. Diamond does not know that I am full of light. But Paramashiv or Paramachaitanya knows, it has awareness in itself that it is what? It is the absolute light. And that light, it is that light which lights everything. As Khemraj would say in his Parapraveshaka. Now, as it is said in the Upanishads, Tameva Bantam Anubhatya Sarvam Tasya Basa Sarvam Idam Vivati. Tameva Bantam, wo to chamakta hai. He is always glistening with light. Tam means that absolute, that Parabrahm or Paramashiv is always full of light. It is always full of Prakash. And because of his Prakasha, because of his luminosity, everything becomes luminous. Where Paramashiv, Parabrahma, not luminous, nothing would manifest, nothing would be, nothing would, what you may call, glow. Nothing would be luminous. Everything would be darkness, chaos, and there will be no existence. It will be above. Where there is no light, there is above. Above is absence, non-existence. Non-existence cannot even exist. How can non-existence have existence? But for the convenience sake, we use there will be non-existence as existing. Light is always filled with awareness, and this awareness is what is called by Chemraj. It is called Akritrim Aham Yati Vispurnam, which means it is unconstructed. This light of consciousness, or what we call I consciousness, is akritrim. It is not constructed, which means it is non-relational. Whatever we see and cognize, it's all relational. That means it is relative. But akritrim aham, I am I consciousness, unconstructed I consciousness. So it is non-relational. It does not need the other. It is complete, purna in itself. Purnamida, Purnamada. It is always, ye bhi purna hai. This is also purna, and it is also purna. From purna comes purna. From the purna comes fullness. Therefore, reality would be devoid of vimarsha if it is apurna. If it is devoid of this light. And Chemraja explains further this, that if there is no light and there is no vimarsh, what is going to happen? In Parapraveshaka, he says, Yadi nirvimarshaha sat anishwaro jadasya prasajet, that everything will be jad, inert. But Kashmir says even the jad object, insofar as light exists, this jad is also having light, because unless it does not have light, it cannot manifest itself. So it is not only the Paramashiva of the Chaitanya which is light, but this light of the Chaitanya is also existing in the so-called inert object. This inert object thereby manifested itself. We have the abhasa of that object, what is called inert object, precisely because it contains within itself the light. Bhaskaracharya, who wrote commentary on Abhinav Gupta's Vimarshani, says when a log moves, he goes to this extent of saying, when a log moves in the river, it moves because of it has this, it contains within itself this light of consciousness. On account of that, it moves in the stream. It is pure consciousness which gives rise to manifestation. And in one of his sutra in the Pratibhigya Hridayam, Chemraj speaks as to how the process of Panchakriti Vidayine, the 5 krityas of Paramashiv as well as of the individual being occurs. He says, Abhasan Rakti Vimarshan Bij Avasthapana Vilapana Tani. There is abhasa. How do we establish the existence of light of consciousness? Because there is abhasa. If there would be no abhasa, if there would be no experience what appears to your cognition, to your perception, then there would be no light of consciousness. Therefore, we will not be then speaking consciousness is light. But because there is abhasan, thereby it establishes the fact that consciousness is always manifestable, and it manifests that which comes into its orbit, or which is contained in the heart, in the womb of consciousness. It is that which Paramashiv, when it over when it brims over with, when it is filled with the plenitude of Ananda, it emanates, Vrasajiyate, it emanates this entire objectivity. And this objectivity, prior to its manifestation, lies in an undifferentiated form in consciousness. And when it manifests, this is called the process of abhasan, arthat, the process of emanation. Can be no abhasan, there can be no abhasa of anything unless it is being emitted. By what? By consciousness. And where does this prayer to it, abhasam, prayer to its emanation, where does it lie? It lies in potential form, in an undifferentiated form with Paramashiv itself, or what we may call with Anutar, or with Parasamvid, or with Paravak. These are the words which we can use. Then there is Rakti. When you perceive something, when something appears to you at the mental level, some objectivity appears to you, what do? You enjoy it. And that period of enjoyment terminates in what? Vimarshan. So it continues for that period. That is called, it's what you may call samahara, vimarshan, samahara. It is withdrawn. Then there is bija avasthapana, vilapan. There is the srishti, there is the maintenance, maintenance in terms of rakti when you enjoy it, and then there is what you call vimarshan, that is laya. Then there is samaha, there is what you may call concealment, pidhana of what appears to you. These processes go always with us. And after the pidhan, there is the emanation, there is the maintenance, there is the concealment, and then there is also bija avasthapana, vilapan, that there is anugraha, grace, through which you come to know everything. And this vimarsha of Paramashiv is known through many terms. It is called Parashakti, it is called Paravak, it is called Aishwarya, it is called Sufurata, it is called Hridaya, it is called Supanda. These are the synonymous or Paryayvachi, synonymous of Vimarsha. Vimarsha is a philosophical term. It is a term used in the Pratyabhijna philosophy, and these terms, Parashakti, Paravak, Swatantri, they are mixture with theological terms as well as philosophical terms. Paravak would be a philosophical term. And all this amount to saying that Chit is universal. Because wherever you go, it is the same Chit which manifests in each and every individual. Although we as anus, we as limited and individual beings may experience it to be different from us. My consciousness is different from your consciousness. And this difference which we see is at the empirical level, at the level of Hridaya, of consciousness, because it is this consciousness upon which is superimposed the so-called individual consciousness, the consciousness of limited being. And this limitation comes to him on account of the avarana. Avarana of what? Of shankas, which are, when the srishti takes place at the level of Maya, there emerges 6 kanchukas, including Maya, Raga, Vidya, Kala, Kala. And these kanchukas function corresponding to the Upanishad, the koshas, they function as you make avaranas, and they limit your understanding of everything. They create within you the sense of difference. They create within you the sense of limitation. And on the other hand, there are these 3 malas. They also function as avaranas. They are anavamala. Anavamala makes you limited in everything, in every field of experience. You have an experience of an object, of a limited object at a limited time. You are no more sarvagya. And then there is Maya. This Maya makes you different, makes you experience everything different from you, and all the objects among themselves also are experienced as being different from one another. This is the function of Maya. And karma, Mala, is the responsible for the wheel, Bhava Chakra, for the wheel of becoming. It continues on account of karma, Mala. And therefore, it is because of that we experience this universal consciousness. In Khem-Raja, in one of his sutra, in the Pratibhigya Hridayam says, when Chitti descends to the level of Chitta, and then there is this diversity, manifestation of diversity. You experience the manifestation of diversity. The universality of consciousness in the form of vimarsha is consumed in the term anuttara. Now let us see how this anuttara, this Paramashiv, this Chaitanyam begins to manifest this objectivity of which we are also a part. It is said in the Spanda Karika, which is one of the greatest contribution of Kashmir Shaivism to world philosophy, that consciousness is Spandanam. It is not static like the Parabrahm of Advaita Vedanta. It is always full, it is always shining, Sufurata, Vispurnam. It is glowing, it is flushing forth. And this Spandanam, Abhinav Gupta said, this Spandanam is Kanchita Chalanam. There is little, this kind of a movement. And this Kanchit Chalanam, what happen, what of objectivity, how does it happen? The first tattva that emerges out of this vimarshan, that emerges out of this Supandanam, is Shiva Tattva. Shiva Tattva is the Pratham Spanda. It is called Pratham, the first, the Spanda in Paramashiv. When there is the overflowing of Ananda, and Ananda is equivalent to Vimarsha, and Chit as Prakash equivalent to Jnana, overflows. There is the manifestation, and the first resultant manifestation of this Ananda is Shiva Tattva. So consciousness is never blank thereby. Therefore, It is always pulsating, throbbing. It is also infinite power. Had it not been infinite power, it could not emanate this entire universe, this entire objectivity, or you may call this entire cosmos. It will be impossible. It is infinite power, and out of this infinite power, or due to this infinite power, manifestation occurs. And what is the cause of this universal manifestation? What is the hetu? In the very first sutra of Hridayam, he says it is Swatantreya. Paramashiv, his will, is equivalent to or is identical with Swatantriya, absolute freedom. He is free to do what he wants to do. There is no obstruction, there is no vigna. So this is another contribution of Kashmir Shaivism to the metaphysical thought of the world, that Paramashiv is not only Chaitanya, it is Vimarsh. And what does that Vimarsh mean? It means Ananda. It also means Swatantriya, freedom to do anything. And this Paramashiv is not indeterminate principle. Absolute, I mean, when we speak of absolute, usually philosophers speak that it is impersonal. No. Kashmir, it is another contribution of Kashmir Shaivism. This Paramashiv is endowed with infinite Shaktis, infinite energy. And that energy is effulgent, luminous. And on account of that energy, so the energy, Shakti, Paravak, and Swatantri are identical terms, or can be used for one for the other. So on account of the Swatantri, this verse he says, this universe is caused to be. How does God think in the beginning that he has to create this? Because his Shakti is his Godhead. Absolute as Godhead contains everything in his womb, in his consciousness. All the objectivity lies in a latent form in Paramashiv. And when there is this Prathama Spanda, when there is this stir, a vibration, what is called Spanda Shastra, when there is this initial stir, the initial manifestation occurs, and that is Paramashiv. Where the absolute, not an absolute power, it will be devoid of transcendental power. It is its infinity of power that makes absolute as transcendent, which means it's free from space and time, from the causality of which we are all victims in space and time. So Paramashiv as transcendent reality is that which is beyond thinking. So you can say it this way: transcendent or Paravak or Paramashiv or Anuttar is that, than that which greater nothing can be thought. We can think nothing beyond that. So where the limitation of thinking or of thought ends, there begins the suffer of ultimate reality, which is Anuttar. And this transcendent power of consciousness
Sunil Ji, the sound has gone.
not tekshat gat ajavat.
breaking up.
Like whose it is samvittam, it's person who remains scooped in itself, cannot universalize itself. And that's why Paramashiv does not remain confined to its singleness, to its singularity. It universalizes itself. And through its universalization, his experience, his Maheshwarya, his Samvittam. Otherwise, he will be no more an absolute. When we speak that Chaitanya Paramashiv Anutar is Chit or Vimarsh, we mean that Paramashiv is I and this. Vimarsh is this, that is the objectivity, and Chit is I. So it is, that's why we call it Aham Vimarsh. I consciousness. I is there, it becomes conscious that it is in itself the Chaitanyam. So it is not like a dead wood. It is, Vimarsha is I and Chaitanya is this. So in Shiva Tattva, this I and this, they are not separate. They remain identical. And this I and this is emanation or whether it is dissolution, whether it is samahara or whether it is srishti. In the both aspects, Paramashiv remains, this why I and this remain identical, undifferentiated. There does not occur any kind of differentiation between I and this. The moment the breakage will occur, as it were, then you have this obvious or evident manifestation of diversity. Vimarsh is when it is equated free will, and it is due to this free will that manifestation takes place. Had Paramashiv not been free, there would have been no creation. Now let us see how Shankara tackles this problem. For Shankara, Parabrahm is Shant Brahma. There is no spandi in it, so therefore it is Nishkri. It cannot act. It is devoid of activity. And therefore it is compelled. How does then Shankara account this manifestation for this diversity that which we experience everywhere? Then he creates a imaginary Maya and imaginary Ishwar. It is the Maya which creates the Ishwar. It is like the illusion one has when there is a rope, and upon this rope we impose a non-existent snake, and having this non-existent snake upon the rope, we experience terrible, terrible, terrible pain and trembling. As in Abhinav Gupta also speaks in one place in his hymn, Anuttara Ashtaka, that when you see a pishach or when you see a snake on a rope, you have the same experience which you experience when you see an actual snake. And that the Shankara, that is how he tries to solve the problem, that there is an imaginary Ishwar, and this imaginary Ishwar is being superimposed upon Brahma or Parabrahma by Maya. And Maya is equated with what? Ignorance. In Kashmir Shaivism, Maya is not equated with Kashmir Shah. Maya is the power of Paramashiv. It is one of the power of Paramashiv to conceal everything, Pidhan. And that's why Shankara could not explain or give an account as to why this creation exists and how it exists and how it came into existence. He could not explain it logically at all. And where does this Maya exist? And Shankar says, I don't know. It is Anyarvachini. It is unexplainable. Why? Now let us suppose that during the period when you have the illusion of snake upon the rope, you actually experience that this is the reality. And that at that time there is Maya. But when you have cognition, real cognition that it is not a snake, it is rope, where did the Maya go? So Maya has been negated. So that's why Adi Shankar could not tell us what is the location of where does it live, where does it exist in Maya. He could not explain. That's why he said it is Anirvachini. It is we cannot speak of it. It is inexpressible. We cannot think about it at all. It is so mysterious. But Kashmir Shaivism does not escape, make an escape route. It says this creation is not the creation of Maya. This objectivity owes its existence to Paramashiv itself. It is Paramashiv himself who, there are two terms, who's prasara, who spreads out, vikasa, who expands himself into this objectivity. And in this moment of objectivity, in this moment of, you may say, involution, Paramashiv, there is some sankuchita aati hai. He becomes contracted because he, as it were, empties himself of his divinity. As in, there's a one verse in Romans, St. Paul says, when God became Christ, he emptied himself of his divinity. It is like that, similar to that concept. That Paramashiv, when he empties, as it were, he does not empty in reality, he is Purna. Purnam idam purnam vadam purnat purnam udachyate. How can he empty? But as a figure of speech, you say he emptied himself. And that's what creation is, the emptying of itself. That because it was before in him, now it is no more in him, it is outside. It is not within him anymore. It is Bahi. It is Unimesh. It is called the process. This movement is called the process of Unimesh. It is for Paramashiv. This Unimesh may be expansion of the universe, but for Paramashiv, it is Sankuchita. Why it is Sankuchita? Because he becomes a limited being like you and me. And we as limited beings are Paramashiv in fact, but we do not know we are Paramashiv. We suffer from this limitation. It is called, when there is the other way, when there is evolution from bottom to top, when movement goes from bottom to top, means when dissolution occurs from Prithvi Tattva to the Shiva Tattva, one element, one Tattva moves into another Tattva into another, till all the 35 Tattvas are absorbed. And that is the expansion for Paramashiv. That is the fulfillment of Paramashiv. That is the unfoldment of Paramashiv in itself. These are the two movements of manifestation. One is the manifestation of the universe, and another movement is the dissolution or samhara of the universe, of objectivity. Because then objectivity goes back to its potential state in Paramashiv. And, and this free will, according to Khemraj, what is this free will? It is Hridayam Parameshutaha. It is the heart. It is the sar of Paramashiv. It is the heart of Paramashiv. Heart The term heart has a very significant meaning in Turkish Shaivism and Kashmir Shaivism. It means the sar of everything, the essence. Parmar sar, the essence of ultimate. That's what Paramashiv is all about. And that's why Chevrai says, what is this free will? What is the Swatantri of Paramashiv? Swatantri is the heart of Paramashiv. Parmeshatu of Supreme Isha, Supreme Lord, which is Paramashiv. And at that level, the heart, this, which is the objectivity, is nothing but the self of Paramashiv. That which we speak, this objectivity, you see, diversity, all this diversity, all this objectivity is nothing but the self, Chaitanyam of Paramashiv. And this Paramashiv has expanded this self outward, Unumukta, jisko bolte hain. There is Unumukta in Paramashiv, intentness. And this intentness comes from the pulsation of Ananda. And when this Ananda overflows, there is the Unmukta. And this Unmukta results in the Bahi Srishti, external Srishti. And this is self-expression of itself, this experience of world, of objectivity as being the self of Paramashiv denotes that experience is always not blank at the absolute level. The experience is always filled with Anandam, and this experience is explained in Paratarshika by Abhinavagupta this way. Yatha Nyagrod Bij Sutha Shakti Rupo Mahadruma Tatha Hradaya Bij Sutha Vishwam Eta Char Achar. How does this universe exist prior to its manifestation, prior to its objective form? It exists in the Paramashiv, in Paramuchaitanya, in the same way as in the seed of a banyan tree lies the banyan tree, the great banyan tree, prior to its manifestation. Prior to its manifestation, this great banyan tree lies one with the seed which is of banyan tree. Likewise, this universe, prior to its manifestation, prior to its externalization, lies within Paramashiv in an undifferentiated form. This identity of objectivity it itself explains itself. Another example, through the example of a peacock. You know, peacock has a colorful plumage, and prior to peacock coming into existence with its plumage, where did it exist? It existed potentially in the juice of the egg of the peacock. And when peacock hatches this egg, there comes out this beautiful creature called peacock with its colorful plumage. Likewise, this entire objectivity, this entire universe lies latent in Paramashiv in an undifferentiated form. There is another analogy does this manifestation harm Paramashiva? Because if you empty yourself, if something comes out of yourself, let us say you have 100 rupees in your pocket, you take out 50 rupees and give it to people, there remains only 50 rupees in your pocket. Does Paramashiva suffer from depletion when this universe is brought out into being, when it is externalized, what is called Ashuddha Adva, extraneous manifestation, when it occurs? Does Paramashiva suffer from some depletion, from some kind of deficiency? Kashmir Shaivism says no, he does not suffer from any kind of deficiency. Why? Because Paramashiva is like an ocean. In the ocean, you have waves and waves and waves coming out, coming out, coming out. But these waves, these tarangas, do not add anything to the ocean, nor do they take out anything from the ocean. Ocean remains the same when there were no tarangas, when there were no waves, and when there are tarangas, when there are waves, ocean remains the same. So there is no loss and profit in to ocean. In like manner, there is no loss and profit insofar as Paramashiva is concerned when he emits this universe. Paramashiva has what we call infinite Shakti. He is never devoid of Shakti. So Shakti or Shaktiman, they are not two different entities, because this universe occurs because of Shakti, Ananda Shakti. If there were no Shakti in Paramashiva, how could he possibly be in a position to give rise to his universe? He gives this rise to this universe because he is endowed with infinite Shaktis. But there are 5 main Shaktis out of this, which are the main Shaktis of Paramashiva. And these 5 Shaktis are Chit, Anand, Icha, Jnana, and Kriya. Chit is such power of Paramashiva, Chit Shakti, through which and in which he shines forth, Prakash. He is luminous. He is never covered by darkness. So, because he is luminous, he makes everything luminous. Tameva Bantam. Uski chamaki, because of his glowing, because of his prakasha, everything is prakashiti. And if there is no prakasha, nothing will exist. So everything is one with prakash. He is Ananda, where how does creation occur? It occurs because Paramashiva is full with plenitude of Ananda. He is not half full of Ananda. He is full, permanently full. And this Ananda and free will, Swatantri, are interconnected. It is through this Swatantri of Paramashiva that Paramashiva is able to do anything and everything. There is no obstruction in his Ananda, and Ananda spills out in the form of objectivity. So it is these 2 powers, the power of Chit Shakti, the power of Ananda, Ananda Shakti. They constitute the Swarupa of Paramashiva. Swarupa means intrinsic nature. When we use the term intrinsic nature or swabhava or swarupa, it means it can never be depleted from Shiva. Swarupa is something which is innate. So Chit and Ananda are intrinsic to Paramashiva. They are not something that is added to him or added to it. He is it constituted by these two fundamental Shaktis, Chit Shakti and Ananda Shakti. Therefore, they are considered as his Swarupa or his Swabhav. Then there is Ichha. Ichha is connected with will, and will is connected with Spanda. When there is stir in this consciousness, when there is throbbing in this consciousness, there is the welling up, sa uchalata, of welling up of what? Of Ananda. Through how this welling up occurs? Through Ichha, through will. So will, swatantri, Ichha, uchalana, they are identical terms. They refer to the same process of manifestation or the same activity of Paramashiva. And this power of Ichha is related to Sadashiv. Chit is related to Shiv. Anand is related to Shakti. And Ichha is related to Sadashiv. Then comes Jnana Shakti, the power of knowledge. And knowledge represents this aspect. Because you have to have a knowable, Gyeya. Unless you have a knowable, you cannot know anything. And knowable is possible only when there is manifestation. And that's why we say, jnana, knowledge, this aspect of God, absolute, is embodied by Ishwar Tattva. So Chit is related to Shiva, Ananda to Shakti, and Ichha to Sadashiv, and Jnana Shakti to Ishvara. Then you have Kriya. How can you bring out creation or whatever you can do? You cannot bring out creation, this entire, well, there is no concept of creation in Kashmir Shaivism. It is emanation. Because why? The emanation does not take place like a potter makes a pot. A potter needs to have, there are two things needed in this kind of, in a theistic concept of creation. Theists say he needs upadana karana, means material cause. Then there is efficient cause, or what is called instrumental cause. Upadana karana means, if you want to make a table, for example, you need wood, you need a carpenter, then you will need the instruments that make the table, and that's called upadana. The man who makes the table, the badiya, the carpenter, is called the instrumental cause. In Kashmir Shaivism, there is no such thing as upadana karana or efficient cause, because everything is there lying in the absolute in itself. It just comes out. That's why we call it Vamanam. Vamanam means to bring out something, to throw out. Bharanam, that's what Bhairava means. Vamanam, Bharanam, Ravanam. Bhairava is one who emanates, who throws out of the universe is Ravanam, Bharanam, that what has he thrown out? That he maintains Bharanam, Dravanam, and then he absorbs it back. That's called Samhar. Samhar does not mean he destroys it. It means that which has been emanated goes back to its potential state and remains in that form. So there is Kriya, and Kriya is the agent. We say Paramashiv is Sarvagya, Sarvakartratva. He does everything and he knows everything. He is omniscient and he is omnipotent. And therefore the power, Kriya Shakti of the Absolute is related to Sadvidya or Shuddhavidya. The entire objectivity, therefore, is the unfoldment, Unmesha, or expression of Paramashiv. How does this manifestation occur? I will speak in a limited way, not the entire Ashuddha Adva, how it occurs, Shuddha Adva. I will say there are the beginning of the tattvas. There are the 36 tattvas. There is also confusion. In the Tantra Lok, there are in some places, there are 37 tattvas. Whatever it be, Utpalacharya in his Karika, Pratibhigya Karika, has enumerated, and Somananda 36 tattvas. And first, Paramashiv has two aspects: transcendent aspect and the immanent aspect. Transcendent aspect means he is Vishwa Utirna. He is beyond space and time. And Vishwa Utirna means he is immanent. He is within us in the universe. Some of the theistic religions, particularly Semitic religions, have a conception of reality, what they call God. बस ये तो कुछ भी नहीं किया, हाँ कोई बात नहीं, थोड़ा 10-12 में the Paramashiv, the theistic religions, the Semitic religions particularly, have a conception of God that he is transcendent. He is so transcendent that you cannot speak his holy name. Even to utter his holy name would be a blasphemy. And one of the theologians, Karl Barth, he was a Calvinist, and Calvinists have this terrible understanding of God or reality that you cannot even approach him. Even if you cannot approach him, then on whom are you going to lie? He says he could not explain, Karl Barth, the incarnation of Christ. What does incarnation mean? In short, incarnation means that God is descending into the creation, into this world, and he's materializing himself, he's taking upon himself this material body, and which means he is becoming immanent. But this was a blasphemy for Karl Barth. So he said the incarnation is like a tangent, touching a tangent. And that's why they have this problem. Kashmir Shaivism does not have this problem. Kashmir Shaivism says the Lord, the Absolute, expressed himself as this universe. So he is immanent, he is transcendent when everything is in the state of dissolution, samahara. But in the state of anugraha, God is not the absolute. There is no God concept also in Kashmir Shaivism. This is a misnomer. Nowadays we use the word God. God is purely a theistic concept. Yes, Kashmir is Ishwara Advaitavad, but Ishwar is not the God of theistic religions. Ishwara is Godhead. That is the power which is embodied in the absolute, and through this Ishwara, this absolute works and functions in this world. Because the absolute also has an administration. Anantanath, Shrikantanath, they are the admin who continue, who administer this universe. And when this universe is, this expression, this manifestation takes place, these two aspects, the Shiva aspect is represents creativity. When Paramashiv, there is when in Paramashiv there is a Spandana and there is the Pratham Spanda, and Spanda is in the form of Shiva Tattva, and Shiva Tattva is creativity, representing creativity of Paramashiv. And Shiva is the initial creative pulsation of the absolute. It means that Anuttara, due to its Swatantriya, desires the emitting of universe. And so this desire is the initial seed of what you may call Prathama Supanda. And then comes the Shakti Tattva. Shakti is the Jnana aspect of Paramashiva. And it functions in the initial, when there is this manifestation, I and thou does not take place yet. Idam, aham, idam does not take place. It is in undifferentiated form, both in Shakti Tattva and Shiva Tattva. That's why the Shakti initially as a jnana, as a knowledge, nisheda vyapara, negates this aspect in Shiva. So that Shiva remains totally absorbed in his aham. And this negation of idam, of this in Shiva Tattva, is called void, shunyam. So that when there is shunyam, there is no this, there is only the I. And this I is identical with chit. So chit in Shiva Tattva, when this is withdrawn by Shakti, and so it is I only that remains. And this state is known as Anashrita Shiva. And this Anashrita Shiva is explained by Chemraja thus. Shro Parma Shiva, Purchid Ek Akhyatmaya, Anashrita Shiva Paryay Shunya Ati Shunya Atmataya, Prakash Avedena, Prakashman Manataya Supurati. Shiva appears as this universe only when the unitary experience is, you may call, there is the unitary experience broken, as it were. So the Paramashiv or Shiva Tattva brings this universe out into the external form through its Shakti only when there occurs a kind of break in the unitary experience. And the appearance, when there is break, there is the experience of objectivity, which means subjectivity disengaged from objectivity. I think I am being told I should close my speech. I will end this beautiful talk. The Laksh, क्या है हमारा? What is the aim? Abhinav Gupta has spoken about it very beautifully. He says, this should be our Laksh. I have been told I must now stop speaking. I therefore apologize. There is a lot to say. It will take another 2 hours. सुपूरति सततम चेत से शिव शिवा क्या है? What is परम शिव? परम शिव है स्वतंत्र, free, स्वातंत्र्य. It's a great concept. Tears come out of my eyes when I use these words, when you feel the pulse of these words. Your whole body trembles with the delight that I am that Paramashiv who is Swatantra. It is such a consciousness, pure consciousness, pellucid consciousness. It's always glistening, satatam sufurati. It is not under avarana, it is shining always, and it makes everything shine. And where does it shine? Chetasi, in my mind. Have we realized this? Have the tears come out of our eyes? What does it mean? That in my mind, this Paramashiv who is Swatantra, who is Swacha, who is Sufurati, glistening, always Satatam, this Paramashiv is in mind, is happening in my mind 24 hours. The moment we realize it, we have grasped as to what Trikashaivism is all about. If we do not realize the what's called the sar, the marm of this verse of Parama Acharya Abhinav Gupta, he says, Parashakti cha ayam karana sarani prantam udittaha. जो पराशक्ति जो है परमेश्वर की, जो उसकी जो शक्ति है वो ऐसी है जो मेरे on my sense, on the edge of my senses. जिस पराशक्ति क्या करती है? She is always playing on the edge of my senses. Means even my senses, what are they perceiving? What are they experiencing? They are experiencing the beauty of Paramashiv in its absoluteness. And Indriya, जो हमारी the Indriya, the senses itself means that they are Indriyas because we see things because our Indriyas are itself permeated by divine light. And that's why they are playing on my senses. Then he says, Tada bhogatmat sufurati cha samastam jagatidam. तब ये समस्त जगत है जो objectivity जिसको हम कहते हैं, whatever this we call this entire universe a jagat. This jagat is what? It is a delight. Bhoga atmakam. It is a delight. It glistens, it shines forth in the form of delight, provided the tears of joy, tears of delight have flowed out of the sockets of our eyes upon realizing Paramashiv to be Swatantra, Swacha, Sufurati Chetasi. Unless we do not realize this, tears of joy will never come out of us. We will be still under the cover of ignorance. And then he says, lastly, न जाने कुत्र अयं ध्वनिर अनुपतेत samsritiriti. I do not know, न जाने. I do not know this sound, dhani. What sound? What is this word? What does this word, the sound word, world mean? I do not know. Because I only see Paramashiv. There is no world for me. Hey, the moment we realize this, my dear friends, my dear brothers and sisters, we are then in Paramashiv. Therefore, aim this experience, and then only you will understand what Tarkashaivism is all about and what Chemaraj has explained in his Pratibhigya Hridayam. I have to say a lot, but maybe some other time. I need your permission. Shivam, Shivam, Shivam.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Motilal Pandit. Thank you for speaking. It was beautiful and everybody was enthralled. Now we're just going to invite Ravi Daji, the great Kashmiri artist, who is the most prolific artist of the whole community, and he makes sculptures and he is making oil painting. I think they're oil paintings. Ravi Da will be able to tell us what his mediums are. I think he uses all kinds of different mediums, but you'll see that he's created paintings of all the great saints of Kashmir and many historical figures and wonderful bright colors, and his style is very unique and he's just pouring out with creativity. So it's my pleasure to introduce him to you today, and he's going to reveal a painting of Sri Kshemaraj. Here we are. I'll spotlight you now, Ravi Daji. Please tell us a little about yourself first.
Namaskar. Let me first congratulate Sunil ji and the ever enthusiastic Sara ji for the cause they have taken up. As you probably know, I am an artist who makes paintings and has taken up a mission to make the paintings of great saints, saints of the soil. Although I have made many saints of Kashmir, but this is the first saint and philosopher whose painting before you, the greatest one of the greatest one, who was the major disciple of Abhinav Gupta ji, Acharya Abhinav Gupta ji, Shri Acharya Kshemaraj ji. I have made the painting of Shri Acharya Kshemaraj ji. This painting is actually made on canvas with acrylic colors. This is although a very small painting, it has 18 inches by 24 inches. Let me first show you the painting itself, and later on, if you would like to ask, if you would like to know anything about me or anything else information you would like to know, I'll definitely explain. Let me, with your permission, I would like to show everyone the painting which I have made on Shri Acharya Kshemaraj ji. This is the painting, and it has been made on canvas, and Acharya Kshemaraj ji is shown here writing the literature what he has written, writing the philosophy what he has written, and the surroundings are the lake and there is a tree behind him and a pillow when he wanted to rest. And there are some scriptures also kept in front of him. And particularly there is a very small earthen lamp has been put, which is burning right now. I'll show you going closer to this one. I don't know whether you will be able to see it cleanly or not, but surely this is one of the things. And this is the close-up of Swamiji's, this Acharyaji's face. This is the close-up of Acharyaji's face. And the writing posture. And this one. I'll be putting it on Facebook wall also today. And after you, because the permission now has to be given by you people, and Sunilji and Saraji, I'm very, very, enthusiastic about, showing my painting to all the people who have been, doing such a great work for the nation, for the, particularly for Shivism. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Ma'am,
Ravindra. That made me cry. It was so beautiful. It was like seeing the real Kshemraj and how he would have worked alongside the river. It just brought tears to my eyes, and I'm sure that everybody else feels that powerful emotion arising from seeing it. Can you please just tell us a little introduction about yourself? How did you learn to create this artwork? Did you go to art school? Can you tell us a little?
Yes, ma'am. I'm actually a professional artist. I have done my degree in fine arts from Kashmir University way back in 1982. Yes, ma'am. And from there onwards, yes, sorry, ma'am.
How did you become so fascinated about producing artworks about the saints and the historical figures of Kashmir?
Yes, ma'am. I have been making paintings on on so many people, and I have done more than 700 portraits of different people, and the paintings have been hung. My paintings have been hung in National Art Gallery also. I have done my one-man shows across India also. But later on, when due to this pandemic, when the lockdown occurred, I had no other job but to be at home and do something. Then suddenly one thing occurred in my mind that why not to do some service for my community also. This was one of the thoughts that occurred in my mind, and I started doing this thing. And the first painting which I made in this way was Mata Rupa Bhavani. She was seen worshipping, and then the second painting that I made was again Mata Rupa Bhavani, and who was getting initiation from her father, Shri Madhav Judhar. And the third painting that I made was Lal Ded. That was Lilishwari standing. Probably you have seen that, and in green Heron, and which was probably a controversy also, because I had put a Shivlinga in her hand, and many people actually objected to that, because they said that she was against that idol worshipping and all those things. So being an ignorant person, probably I had done that. But definitely whatever comes in my mind, whatever comes in my mind, and whatever thoughts come to me, I simply try to portray them on the canvas. And one more mission what I have taken up is the lost history of Kashmiri Pandits. In that series, I have made some 6-7 paintings also till now. Probably I don't know whether you have gone through those paintings or not, but surely there are so many new paintings coming up. The atrocities meted by the Kashmiri Pandits, the atrocities which have been very, very rigorous on Kashmiri Pandits in the past 600-700 years. the 7 Exodus of Kashmiri Pandits, and the latest one in 1990, and which I was also a victim of. And now, since I am putting up in Pilani, and I have got my house also built there, and I am permanently residing there, and I am now completely devoted to my community work. So I'm making all the paintings for them. I will do whatever I can do with all the grace of the Almighty and your blessings. And I hope that everyone will surely give me a helping hand also in this way. And from this platform, I would like to call all other artists of Kashmiri artists particularly to come forward and do their work also, do their emotions also, make their canvases also in this cause. That is what I'm doing, ma'am.
I have to say I agree with you, and that many revolutions have started from artwork, and much social change can be brought and public awareness can be brought through artwork. I just need to close now, and thank you very, very much. And now I'm going to call Sanjay Raina.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you very, very much. And Sanjay ji, please come.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
I think we should be thankful to Almighty that we are having gurus like Motilal ji among us this time. We should feel enough lucky that we are just with naked eyes, we are seeing these great people, these great scholars. The way Khemraj ji has just presented as a bridged form, a summarized form of Kashmir Shaiva Darshan, Tirga Darshana in form of Parapraveshka. The same way our great Guru, Sri Motilal ji, has just presented before everybody a summarized form of Sapanda Kairaka, Pratibhaga, and more particularly Parapraveshka, the Tattvas, 36 Tattvas. Though with the paucity of time, we need more and more sessions, webinars, seminars, wherein we will just request with folded hands toward these great gurus, particularly to Sri Motilal ji, to have sessions for younger generations for more and more easy explanation of Tirga Darshana. I once again thank him for his simple explanation of Parapraveshka, Sapanda Kairaka, and Pratibhagya Hade. Dashway, the nectar was pouring down from your mouth, sir. With folded hands, I thank you, and request you that kindly be with us in. This is not enough. We need to have more and more interactive sessions in shape of seminars, webinars, talks, group meetings, so that we are able to continue this legacy, great legacy of Kashmiri Pandits for the humanity. And Raviji, entire community, entire Shaiv lovers are thankful to you for your wonderful job. We are thankful to you. Moreover, Sarah, my younger sister Marlini, my younger brother Dr. Mahesh, my younger brother Sunil, you people, rather we all are doing a wonderful job. Tirka is not an ordinary thing. It is not an ordinary thought. It is a superiorist thought. Rather, this is the only thought. Now we need to do a lot, and you people are doing it nicely, wonderfully. I am thankful to my own ashram, Sri Ram Shaiva Ashram, Fatehgadu, Vidyadhar Ashram, more particularly Ishwar Ashram, Himalayan Heritage Foundation, because we all are trying to pour in our efforts to just do something in service of Paramashiva, in service of Trika. And we should, Paramashiva should give us strength that we should continue this till we are alive. Let me give you an information. Tomorrow is the birthday of Khemraji Maharaj. We are starting tomorrow's day with prayers at Ram Shaiva Ashram. Then it will be followed by prayers at Vidyadhar Ashram. And in the evening at 5:30, we will be having an interactive session talk by Professor Makhalalji Kuklu. Then our Shaiva Guru, Sri Margji. Then it will be followed by Sandhya, Bhajan Sandhya by great singer and activist singer Dilip Lunguji. And at 11 a.m. tomorrow, we are having a seminar in Sanskrit department of SD University, Ambala. And that's being conducted by Professor Dr. Ashutosh Angirasji. So we all are doing whatever is possible. I once again thank you all. With a small prayer, we will conclude this session. Agad samshayam bodhe samvatarnatarini vande vichitrartha padam chitram tam garibharati vishwatmikam tat utirnam radiyam parameshato Paradishaktirupina Sufrantim Samvidam Nama Nama Shivaya Satatam Nandant Sadhuka Sarve Vinashanto Vidoshaka Avastam Shambhavim Nastu Prasannastu Guru Sada Namami Yamani Nath Lekhalam Kritapantalam Bhavami Bhausantap Nirvan Pansadani. I once again thank you all. Over to Malini.
Thank you, everybody. And that's it for now. Hari Om Tat Sat. Have a wonderful night.
Hari Om. Hari Om.
Hari Om.